Right, I'll call to order the regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Platteville for Tuesday, November 13th, 2018, and we'll start with roll call.
That's
Robin Klein.
Here. Yours is
Don Francis.
Here.
Barbara Stockhausen.
Here.
Ken Killian.
here.
Eileen Nichols.
Here.
Sina Sharp.
Here.
Barbara Doss.
Here. First item on our agenda this evening is a special presentation from Brian Allen, the Director of the EMS at Southwest Health, with an EMS update.
Good evening. Be short. For those of you that do not know who I am, my name is Brian Allen. I'm the Director of EMS and Emergency Management at Southwest Health. A little bit of background, EMS transitioned from the City of Platteville in 2015 after a lengthy discussion. February 2016, Southwest Health transitioned from a paid on-call service as it was with the city to a full-time department. In April 2016, we broke ground on our new facility that's now a couple years old, which is much larger than the old facility by about 3 times. In 2017, or June of 2017, we transitioned, or we had applied and were approved by the state EMS office to transition to a paramedic level of service. And in November of 17, we added a third ambulance to our fleet. And since that time, since the time of the transition, even before, we have just grown with numbers of calls. So with that information, we looked at our staffing, and as of Sunday, we added a second full-time staffed ambulance crew at the paramedic level to handle the calls. Looking back at our calls from 2006 to now, or 2017, with the calendar year, we saw a 47% increase. Over the last 3 years, it was a 15.3% increase, and looking at the numbers so far for the year, we're on pace to have an 8% increase from last year. So obviously much needed with the addition of the second crew, and we also have the ability to staff all 3 ambulances depending on the day and time. So the information is coming out in the 53818 update for the fall, but just wanted to give the city council an update that we have added a second full-time staffed paramedic ambulance that's on the ready to go.
Anyone have any questions?
So you have, let me get this straight, you have 2 paramedic crews now,
Correct.
and they are staffing the truck 24 hours a day?
Correct.
And then do they work also part-time in the hospital?
Yep, it's the same model that we've been using. It's just we've added another crew.
Okay. And do you have a third truck?
Yes.
Okay. And my next question is, do you have any non-payments as far as runs? In other words, Platteville used to have non-payment maybe 18, 20,000 a year. So what is yours running?
I don't know. That information's all given at the annual report in January or in March of every year that we do.
What was it last year?
I couldn't even tell you. I don't know. That was 6 months ago. I don't study the report that closely.
Do you use also volunteers?
Nope, it's a paid service. We're a full-time department.
All the people that are staffing, that staff a truck, they're paid.
Correct.
Okay.
As far as the number of runs that aren't paid, it's going to be consistent. So whatever it was with the city, that really hasn't changed. It may have actually gone up because we're seeing more and more people that don't have insurance.
Brian, could you tell me how many paramedics now that you have? I know you say you have 2 full-time crews, so that equates to...
There are 6 full-time paramedics that are on the ambulance. Myself and the EMS emergency management coordinator are both paramedics, and we have, I believe, 4 casuals. So there's a total of 12 paramedics. We have a staff of 28.
Let me get it straight. And how many paramedics per truck? 2?
There's one paramedic on each ambulance and an EMT or an AEMT. So there's 2 people working each ambulance.
But one is a paramedic.
Correct. There has to be one paramedic on every ambulance.
So 2 are in the ambulance, not 2 and a driver.
Correct. It's just 2.
2.
Any other questions from anyone? Or
I know you were
comments?
helping out Cuba City. Are you still?
Nope. We did that for December, January, and part of February, and since then they've been able to maintain their service.
As far as transfers of people, in the past I've heard where sometimes people cannot be transferred by Platteville and have to go out of town to get a means of transfer. Is that still happening?
Very rarely. Just depends on how busy the ambulances are. If they're already out on a transfer. Because we always have to have one available for 911 calls, so.
Your service actually is available, or you have an agreement, I think, with like the university and maybe the high school that you have an ambulance on site when there are athletic events. Is that true?
Football games for the university and high school. At the high school, it's varsity and junior varsity games. And we also do standbys for the university commencements.
Anybody else have any comments? Well, congratulations. I think it's a big boon for the Southwest Wisconsin to have 2 paramedic level.
Thank you.
All right, next item is consideration of the consent calendar. The following items may be approved in a single motion and vote due to the routine nature of previous discussion. Please indicate to the council president if you would prefer a separate discussion and action. A is council minutes from the October 16th special council meeting and the October 23rd regular meeting. B is payment of bills. C is financial report for October. D is appointments to boards and commissions. I have 2 this evening. For the Airport Commission, Dennis Cooley, and for the Community Safe Routes Committee, David Ralph. Licenses in the packet, temporary Class B to sell wine to the Platteville Regional Chamber on Wednesday, November 14th from 5 o'clock PM till 6:30 PM for business after hours. Also, the 1-year and 2-year operator licenses to sell and serve alcohol. And F is to cancel our December 25th council meeting. Is there a motion?
I move adoption of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We'll vote.
Klein,
Yes.
Francis,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sharp,
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, if any, if anyone does want to speak, normally at this time, we do have some green sheets of paper back on the table back there, so if you did want to speak on a particular issue or make a comment or an observation, that's when you would fill that paper out, and evidently I may have one.
I have 2.
That's for an item later on our agenda, so we'll go on to reports in our packet.
I have an.
Also for later in the meeting. The reports in our packet include the Water and Sewer Commission, Killian, Stockhausen, or Sharp,
Nothing to add.
No addition.
Public Transportation Committee, Dawes,
Nothing to add.
Historic Preservation Commission, Killian.
I'll just refer you to one of the sets of minutes, and that's October 4th. I encourage you to read that particular one. That was a special meeting with Jody Rose here from the state. Talks about historic preservation as far as buildings. So please take a look at that. Help answer questions. Thank you.
Other reports in our packet include a water and sewer financial report for October, and also the October airport financial report, and department progress reports. Any questions or comments on any of those? All right, hearing none, we'll go on to the first action item, which is ordinance 1812 relating to confidentiality of income and expense records. Is there anyone on the staff that would like to speak to this?
I can speak to it.
All right,
This relates to a provision in the state statutes concerning border review proceedings. The assessor assesses certain properties based on income, and he has the authority to compel the taxpayer to provide income information to him or her. That's used for the assessment of the property. If they refuse to provide that, then their ability to challenge the assessment is quite limited. The statute requires every municipality to pass an ordinance providing that the information that is provided to the assessor, income information, is confidential, not subject to open records, that type of thing. This ordinance is consistent with that statutory requirement.
questions, anyone? Is there a motion?
I move adoption of ordinance 1812 relating to confidentiality of income and expense records.
Second.
Motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Klein,
Yes.
Francis,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Nichols, Sharp,
Yes.
Doss.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next is the original Class B regular liquor license applications.
Candace. Would you like me to speak to this? Okay. There has been a little bit of a change since the last time we visited this, as application number 1 has withdrawn their application. So at this time, the only applicant we have is Lisa and Jeff Hawes. Like I said, not a whole lot has changed. There is a letter that you were given from Chief Doug McKinley that was on your desk when you guys came in tonight. Do you guys have any questions?
Well, I'm curious, after, and maybe Lieutenant Haas can address this, what duties do you have left? Or maybe it's the chief, because they've taken quite a bit away from your job description, so I'm just curious. Oh, paragraph.
Vote. Chief?
What are you asking now?
Well, I think my assistant or alderman gave me the information on your letter, the last paragraph. I'm sorry, I missed that.
I think I have a similar question. Is there going to be a change in the job description due to shifting of duties?
If that becomes necessary down the road, that was something that we had discussed.
Well, you've listed quite a few things that will be changed. And a portion of his job will be taken over by other members of the police department. And then you say in your report here that any overtime would not be created. So you're asking other people to do part of his work, and you're not going to have any overtime. And so it seems to me that that's
I would anticipate.
not too good a way to do it, to shift the duty to somebody else. Are these other people going to have less duties that will go to Jeff?
I would anticipate that Lieutenant Buchholz and I would absorb those duties, the vast majority of them, and we are not subject to overtime.
I have a question. So did you talk to Jeff first before he wrote the memo, or did you send it out to him? Because maybe he had insight over his job too, and what he sees as his responsibility, and how you guys could work together to make sure there was no biases, and make sure he still is serving us as a lieutenant, because he's been working for you guys for like 22 plus years. So I think to note him and get rid of a lot of his power, it would be a waste of resources. So have you discussed with him, like I said, prior to the memo?
After I drafted the memo,
Maybe along that lines, and I don't know exactly the, how it works, but you have a committee that oversees your department for hiring
we have the
and
Police and
such?
Fire Commission, and their purview is hiring, firing, and significant discipline.
So would it be logical to consult with them if we're looking at kind of position descriptions or titles? And did you, or would you expect to, or maybe just?
If you had a city where the Police and Fire Commission had optional powers, then yes. That is not the case here, so that I did not consult with them prior to drafting that.
In part of your statement, you talked about how you don't foresee him having a liquor license would actually have any actual problems. So I guess it just feels like that's a weird word. I think it seems to me that we're creating a perception of fear. We're perceiving what we perceive somebody else might maybe think. Is there like legal backing to what you're doing? Like changing all of his job duties and everything?
There's nothing illegal about what I'm doing.
Right, well, right, but I'm just asking. Okay.
For what it's worth, whenever you're dealing with conflict of interest and potential conflict of interest issues, by definition, you're almost always dealing with what could occur. You know what I mean? It's a speculative nature, just by nature of what you're talking about. What I understood from the chief's memo is that was his position on what, if the council were to approve this, what he would do to attempt to mitigate any conflict of interest issues. So it's certainly within his purview of chief. There's nothing illegal about it that is consistent with what I would recommend he do.
What I liken it to is if you're driving a car and you see an object in the road, you either swerve or brake. You don't hit it and then say, boy, I'm glad that wasn't a problem.
My question is, did you consider a reduction in salary due to the shifting of duties?
That's not something that I've progressed to that level.
And perhaps if I can jump in, because the chief and I have had discussions about that, not about that particular issue, but about the adjustment in duties. And even though as you're looking at this and it appears, it appears to be a long list relative to Lieutenant Haas's other duties, he still would have a robust full-time job with the police department. There's plenty of work to be done. It's not to say that there might not be some hardship in terms of for the Lieutenant Buchholz and the chief to pick up some of the duties, but we didn't have concerns about whether or not there would be enough work.
Any other questions?
Are we the first city in the state to encounter this?
Sure not.
Ken, I have a friend who's a council person in a city to the east of here, and so I posed that question to a city council person who had, and on their, 3 of their police officers are co-owners of establishments with liquor licenses. So I don't think that Platteville is the first place, and I suspect that this other community is not the second place. I suspect that it's perhaps more common than we would anticipate, and that it's just something new or different for our community.
Other questions or comments?
Well, I have a statement. I'd like to visit. Is this not when I do the thing?
The applicants have asked to speak, so
Okay, then
I think I'll have the applicants
Perfect.
come up and speak. And then if the council has questions of them, they certainly could ask at that time.
Okay.
I'm Jeff Haas. My address is 755 Grant Street in the city of Platteville. I had a meeting with Doug McKinley last Thursday afternoon, only minutes after receiving a copy of this memorandum, as he said. As a result of that meeting, I want to express that there are some questions you may want to ask concerning the memo. What is the frequency that Lieutenant Haas currently makes decisions about liquor licensing checks or liquor licensing law violations? What is the normal process an officer should go through when they find themselves presented with a conflict of interest? What do you think Lieutenant Haas will do to physical evidence concerning liquor licensing violations? What do you think Lieutenant Haas will do to digital evidence concerning liquor licensing violations? How many liquor licensing violations has the department's detective investigated while she is in her current position? How many criminal charges have been filed concerning liquor licensing violations? Was there a request by Lieutenant Haas to work in any potential licensed establishments? This memorandum signifies a significant loss in trust in me. I would ask you to inquire as to why there is such a loss in trust. I will express again that I have done nothing wrong, nothing illegal, nothing against public policy. As a matter of fact, my wife and I have been totally honest in this endeavor. If Lisa was not married to me, she would only have to be concerned with the zoning of the property, and she could then concentrate on telling you about all the positives that this expansion brings to her business. She could remind you of the number of employees she currently has, the 8 years of positive business growth in which she has created developed enough clientele to open and keep two locations full, and the positive of adding more tax dollars to this community. But instead, she has to sit here or stand here and be discriminated against because of who her husband is. A person that does not run her business, but has had honest, long-term employment with the city of Platteville. Thank you.
I'm sorry, did anyone from the council have any questions for either one of the applicants? Okay. I would note that the chief of police, I believe, has the authority to make these decisions as far as personnel is concerned. And in order to limit or prevent the potential for conflict of interest. So I think that is really what both the chief and the attorney have stressed so far, is that there's the potential for conflict of issue concerns and the responsibility of the chief, and I think of the council as well, is to protect the city as much as possible for any potential for conflict of issue concerns. So I viewed the memorandum in that light. Not that it was saying that Lieutenant Haas has done anything in the past that would indicate that something might happen, but only that as a city, we do not want to put ourselves in a position to face that situation. And that is how I viewed this memo, that it was a step to take. Lieutenant Haas, as has been stated, will still have a lot of responsibility. I don't think that, and the things that have been removed may be minor in the long run if you have not been involved in liquor issues very much anyway. So, again, I guess that I didn't view it as a negative, I viewed it as a positive. So, any other comments right now? We have a request for a liquor license. It would be, as I understand it, for the regular license, not the reserve license, is that correct? All right, so the regular license, we have one available. So discussion on the request for a original Class B regular liquor license, and actually, we do have one person who wants to speak yet, Jeff, or sorry, Jack, if you'd like to come up and maybe make your comments before we have discussion?
Yes, my name is Jack Ludke. I'm the Executive Director for the Platteville Main Street Program. And one of the pillars of the Main Street Program, the four-point approach, is for economic development. And I can only speak for the contact that I've had over the last 8 years with Lisa Hawes and the development of her business. And I still remember the day Lisa came to me 8 years ago and was new in the community and started her business in a small shop with, I think, one chair to start with, Lisa, if I'm correct, and has developed her business over that time to the 2 locations that have been indicated. Always looking forward to the impact that she could make on the community. She's now hired a number of people in the community, and as far as I'm concerned, economic development is certainly epitomized by what Lisa has been able to accomplish, and always with, I guess, the highest standard of involvement in the community. And I think that if I had to advise young entrepreneurs interested in staying in Platteville, I would use Lisa as an example of that. So I think the council can feel comfortable and in a positive vein that what Lisa is asking for in terms of granting this liquor license would be a very good indication of their support for the economic development. She doesn't make these decisions lightly, and she's putting her money where her mouth is in terms of putting forth a business model that she believes will be successful. On the other, so I think it would behoove the council really to take a look at that as a model of what, you know, the youth support and what the Main Street program really also supports for young entrepreneurs. But the other issue, and this is an aside that I personally have observed, and I had another incident today brought to my attention. I think the whole process for the state's involvement in granting of liquor licenses is the wrong approach. I think the city, which is involved with not only the granting of these licenses, the understanding of who gets these licenses, the limitation on the number of licenses, all of that is a community-involved situation, not only for Platteville, but for other communities in the state of Wisconsin. And I think that the state really should give some of that control back to the city in how many licenses are granted, and to the individuals that the city has to approve the granting of these licenses to. And the reserve licenses carrying a $10,000 fee with no remuneration back to the individual who's investing that as a new entrepreneur is a totally wrong approach. I think the way they initially had set it up, where they would give an individual credit for investment in a building process to open their new establishment, is something that is a much better approach to if they're going to require them to pay $10,000 to start. If you're a new young entrepreneur trying to get into that business, another $10,000 fee where you're not going to get anything back on it besides paying for the annual fee for the liquor license is a pretty hefty number to reach. So that's just my personal opinion.
Jack, just when you said they require a $10,000 fee, who is they?
State.
Thank you.
So it seems to me to be totally unbalanced with what we're trying to do. And since you not only have the policing power on the other end, on the back end after the license is granted, I think the state certainly should look at, or our legislatures should look at giving that power back to the various communities. My personal opinion. But
Thank you. All right.
I'll make a motion, we grant the original Class B regular liquor license to the business that's going to operate on the second floor of what we currently I thought we had a new name for it last time, but I don't see it in my,
Yeah, I'm not sure that we have the exact footage description at this point, Candace, do we?
I believe we do. I don't know if they have a name. I might be, I know that the,
If you-
okay, I'm not aware of the name, so.
Okay, so the liquor license
says-
needs,
Does it go to her individually anyhow?
MPK Rock?
no, it has to go to the.
It goes to her as well as the location. So it's both. It can't be, if it's issued to her, she can't take it anywhere she wants to. It has to be to that location. And then it's not also just tied to the location, it's to her. So if she were to leave that business, it wouldn't just automatically go to the next person that bought that business.
so it will go to the location as described in the application, is that
Correct.
correct? Okay.
Well, I second Barb's.
Well, I wasn't
I
finished.
think she needs to add things yet.
I wasn't finished. It was okay
when
for
you're
you to
finished.
second. Okay. As soon as all inspections are passed and the required fees are paid, then the liquor license would be issued. My understanding, and it would be to Jeff and Lisa Haas, and it would be for the upstairs location at 130 Market Street.
Well, I second Barb's motion.
I've already had it.
All right, so we
With
have a
the
motion and a
addition.
second to award the regular license. Is that correct, Barbara? I'm
Yes.
sorry if you said that.
I said, I think
Okay.
I said the irregular Class B regular liquor license.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Unless there's any further comments, we'll vote.
Fine?
Yes.
Francis?
Yes.
Stockhausen?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes,
Nichols?
Yes.
Sharp?
Yes.
Doss?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Go on to C, which is contract 918, snow and ice removal. Howard?
I was hoping we wouldn't need that anytime soon, but, you know, the weather seems to change around on us real quickly. Every year, we contract out for removal of snow and ice on sidewalks in front of properties where the owners or residents do not shovel their walks. This charge plus a $30 admin fee per parcel is billed to the owner. We provided bid packages to 5 local firms. We received 2 bids. The tabulation is enclosed. Code enforcement officer documents measures snowfalls. When a snowfall is 2 inches or more, staff documents with a photo. The code enforcement officer goes around to all sidewalks after 24 hours to document potential violations of the ordinance. Code enforcement officer places a door hanger on each parcel and documents the address. This list is provided to our contractor. The contractor goes to those documented locations. If the sidewalk is cleared, there is no further action. If the sidewalk had not been cleared, the contractor removes the snow and ice, and the owner is billed for the cost of the service. This year, the low bid was Southwest Lawn Care, 19 cents per square foot or $39 minimum for snow only. Hard-packed snow and ice removal is 24 cents a square foot or $49 minimum per location, which is slightly cheaper than the price last year. And staff recommends award to Southwest Lawn Care.
Questions, anyone?
no, I asked the question last time, this is gonna cover the whole city?
Yes,
And this is what has been done in the past, that's correct?
yes,
Okay, and is the contractor able to do that?
yes. Southwest Lawn Care has performed that task for us in the past.
How often do you have people not pay that, I don't know, fine's not the right word, is it? But when they get billed, and do you have people contest it for the price or?
We have people that do contest it. That's why we take photos before and after. On a case-by-case basis, we may decide to waive the administrative fees, or if there's a clear error, then we remove that from the property. Otherwise, if they don't pay that amount, there's a 1% interest charge every so often, every month that it goes unpaid, and then at a certain point in time, then it goes onto the tax roll. So it is part of the tax bill.
I would just note that with the door hanger system, I think generally it's gotten much better in terms of number of actions needed to be taken and number of contested actions.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion, we approve contract 918 to Southwest Lawn Care per their bid of 19 cents per square foot, $39 for a minimum for snow only, and 24 cents per square foot, $49 minimum for hard packed snow and ice.
I second.
The motion in a second. We'll vote.
Klein?
Yes.
Francis?
Yes.
Stockhausen?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes,
Nichols?
Yes.
Sharp?
Yes.
Doss? Motion carries.
Next is land donation to the city.
Okay, this is regarding Lot 21, Oak Haven subdivision. That lot is vacant. It's still owned by Bob Cody, the developer of that subdivision. Mr. Cody has decided that it would be difficult to construct a home on that lot due to the topography. It's got a very steep slope. So he's interested in donating that lot to the city, and so the city could make it part of the green space behind that subdivision. This was an item that was considered by the council back in 2017, and it was actually, the council accepted the donation with some conditions that Mr. Cody take some cleanup measures on that lot. At that time, Mr. Cody was unwilling to do that work, so nothing really happened with this situation. Mr. Bruce Schmidt, neighbor to the lot, just recently requested that the council reconsider accepting that donation. He had already started to do some of the cleanup work and had indicated to the council that he would do some additional work and also accept ownership of a portion of that lot for continued ownership and maintenance. However, Mr. Schmidt has now indicated that he is no longer in a position to accept ownership of that lot, so he has withdrawn his request. However, Mr. Cody is still interested in donating the lot, so at this point, the council can do like they had done previously, not accept it unless the conditions are cleaned up, or the council could accept ownership of the lot. If that is the case, I think staff would recommend accept ownership with the understanding that it's not going to be a park, it's going to be open space with, no maintenance situation. But I think the council has two options that they can consider, accepting it or not accepting it. Unfortunately, I know people had asked if we had any additional information from Mr. Schmidt as to regarding why he changed his decision. Alls I had received was the same letter you had received.
does anybody know the amount of taxes paid on that lot?
Not know that answer.
Well, I certainly would not be in favor of accepting it as is. I don't know what is left in terms of exposed concrete, metal, plastic. I don't know about the trees. I don't know about the rest of it. So I certainly don't see accepting this as is unless I know what as is means. And if it's significantly different or significantly better than it was in June of 2017. But I'd actually make the same motion that we had in 2017 that we accept the donation of Lot 21 of the Oak Hill subdivision from Bob Cody with the condition that all exposed concrete, that the exposed concrete, metal, plastic fill be covered with black dirt and flattened out, that dead trees be removed, and that a quick claim deed what? And the that was the same thing before. We would give a quick claim deed to a neighboring property owner for the mobile portion of the land if there was an interested party. So I'd make the same motion that we had in June of 2017.
So you just don't want it to change. It would only get possibly worse.
So can the city, like snow removal, clean
Let
it
me
up and bill
just before we go on, is there a second to that motion or not?
I think I kind of want to second it, but I want to understand more about what's the other options are.
Okay, well, the motion dies for
Okay,
lack of
for
a
a second.
second. Okay,
Okay.
but we can still have discussion, so,
Got it.
I'm sorry, Don, you were going to say?
Fine for now. It's not going to get any better if we leave it in his hands. It can only get possibly worse because it's still his property. But at least we take it, we know that it won't get worse.
But if we take it, we lose taxes that are being paid on it,
Okay, well,
right?
let's, sure. You want
And
to,
if we could clean it up and bill him on his tax, is that a thing? That's what I'm asking. Like, what do we do when a property's not taken care of and it's a risk? Because it's washing out as well, right? It was also
There's a statute that permits the city to undertake work for the benefit of private property owners and specially charge that back to the property owner. It's just as what Howard had mentioned for the snow removal. The statute specifically provides for that. Here, as I understand it, we're dealing with dead trees and fill that lawfully is there, but is unsightly or of such a condition that the city council would not be willing to take it in that condition. That being the case, the statute really would not cover that type of service being provided. Clearly, if there's a violation of state law or city code, we could require him to mitigate that, bring his property into compliance. Failing to do that, we could cite him and fine him and then specially charge him. But there'd have to be a violation. The property couldn't exist. If it exists, if its condition right now is lawful, we'd have no authority to compel him to change it or to do it ourselves and charge it to him.
And perhaps one option would be, I'm not big fans of tabling items, but perhaps to table this and staff could go out and walk the site, because I believe Mr. Schmidt had said that he had done some work on the property himself, and maybe we could provide a report with respect to the condition of the property and what we think the city may, and if there would be any actions the city would need to take with respect to cleanup.
Well, supposedly Mr. Schmidt has removed the dead trees. He has stated that. The dead trees resulted from the dumping around the roots, so it killed the trees. And then there's about 2 or 3 piles of spoil there, plus blacktop slabs lying on the surface. In my opinion, it wouldn't take much for the city to remove those or to place them where there's been a landslide, a small landslide. I think we should go ahead. My opinion is to go ahead and to acquire the property. Now, I've asked as to what the taxes are that we'll lose. I'd like to find that out.
because if it reaches a certain number, then you would say no?
That's a possibility, yes. Because Mr. Cody has to pay the taxes.
If we leave it in his hands, he wants to get rid of it, If you leave it in his hands, then it can continue to be an eyesore or get worse because it's his.
That's a possibility.
Mr. Schmidt has taken his own accord to try to make it better. And I have a feeling that he just doesn't want to take on the extra taxes of the small portion, but he would still continue to improve it or keep it up to date, upkeep, I mean, without us stepping in at all.
I think perhaps, as the city manager suggested, tabling this, because I do think, Ken, we can get the answer as far as taxes is concerned. We could also, as city manager mentioned, have someone walk the site. I agree with you. I was up there as well, and it has been much improved over 2017, but I don't really know what else can be done to stabilize the area. So, I would be in favor if someone wanted to make that motion to table it and bring it back next time. And
I'm actually interested in making a motion to accept it without the conditions that were previously on it.
that's your motion.
If those words work, that's my motion.
So accept the donation of the lot as it now exists.
Yes.
Is that correct?
I'll second it.
All right, so we have a motion and a second now to accept the lot as it now exists. Any other discussion on that motion? We'll vote.
Klein,
Yes.
Francis,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes,
Killian,
Yes,
Nichols,
Yes.
Sharp,
Yes.
Doss,
No,
motion carries.
Right. Next item. We are on to information and discussion. Ordinance on speed limit for Mineral Street.
Yes. Staff received a request to review the speed limit on Mineral Street regarding pedestrian safety crossing the street between Jenner Tower and Jenner Tower Park. Staff reviewed the situation, and we agree that 15 miles per hour is an appropriate speed based on the narrowness of the street, parking, other congestion in the area, and it would also be the same as the posted speed limit for Main Street, just one block to the south. In order to be consistent, we suggest the speed limit to be applied from Water Street all the way up here to City Park behind you at Bonson Street. There should be a study of actual traffic speeds to confirm that reducing the speed limit is consistent with state and engineering guidelines. As an update, I do have a couple of student volunteers who are looking to do some speed studies on this stretch. The only budget or fiscal impact would be adding speed limit signs at the appropriate interval. And we have an enabling ordinance in your packet.
So you mentioned some students, Howard. How soon would that information be available?
They were planning on starting their studies later this week. I don't know how much time it will take. They are volunteer. They're doing this voluntarily, not as part of coursework or anything like that. So I don't want to push them.
I was just curious. It may not come back at our next meeting then.
We'll have to look at that. It's not required prior to council action, but it's prudent to do so in case it's challenged.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, next, information and discussion, a conditional use permit for 755 Lancaster Street.
The owner of the property at 755 Lancaster Street has a existing home occupation for a real estate business at that location. The ordinance allows signage for home occupations, but it limits it to a 2x2 wall sign, basically 4 square feet. And the ordinance says anything larger than that for signage or any freestanding signage can be approved as part of a conditional use permit. So due to the location of that house being set back further from the street than most of the properties in that area, occasionally they get people that need to drop off an earnest money check or something of that nature for a real estate transaction. They have difficulty finding that location, so they'd like to put a freestanding sign up closer to the street next to their driveway. It'd be a 3x4 sign that would be more readily visible. So other than that, it's a pretty straightforward request. The Planning Commission has recommended approval, and staff would also recommend approval. Any questions?
I have a couple. How tall is the sign stand up? Because it says 3x4, but like how far is it off the ground? You know?
71 inches.
Okay, I must have missed that. Okay, and then my other question.
75 inches, sorry.
Is it obstructing any views? Is it like, I'm not totally sure where the lot.
No, that's,
Okay.
it's basically a straight section of the highway, and it would have to
Okay.
be on the private property.
Okay, so like if
So
you're gonna
it'd
turn a
be-
corner or something, you could.
It would
still-
be at least 15 feet back from the curb.
Okay, so I won't do anything with traffic or anything like
Correct.
that. Okay.
Right.
Any other questions? All right, next item is historic designation, local historic designation for 280 Division Street.
Yes, the owner of that property, excuse me, has submitted a request to have that property designated as a local historic structure based on the obviously the history of the property and the architectural style of that property. The Historic Preservation Commission has considered this request and has recommended approval. The council does also have to approve that request. Basically, if it is approved, it would be under the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission to review and approve any exterior changes to that property. Any questions?
Just refresh my memory, improvements to the property, would that apply to the interior and exterior, or only the exterior?
Exterior.
Exterior, okay. Any other questions on that? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
We have a motion and a second. We'll vote.
Klein?
Yes.
Francis?
Yes.
Stockhausen?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes.
Nichols? Sharp?
Yes.
Doss?
Yes.
Motion carries.